right, I can do it like that. But now I got to figure out how to get it up to the full screen. Well, as long as it's on and I push play. Oh, it's right here. Hey, I made it full screen. But it's not going to play until I go back. But I'm going to need to stop it a few times. So I'm not sure how I can do that. Let me see. No, the space bar doesn't do it. All right. All right, it's going to be crazy, but I'm just going to flip back and forth to change these things. So, let me step for a second.
Hey, everybody. How'd you go?
All right. So if you can't get up here and get to another chair, there's a couple of chairs up here. There's a couple more chairs up here, 3, and there's a couple of spots on the bench. If you can't get up here where you can see it, you can go onto YouTube and look it up. And what's playing on the TV here is playing off of YouTube. So you'll see everything that's up here on the screen if you go to the YouTube channel. I think the YouTube channel is at Nancy Wallace Grow. Growing with Nancy Wallace? Okay. I don't know what I made the YouTube channel.
I've linked it so many times, Nancy. You know, I got you, girl.
Growing with Nancy Wallace. I'm see what's up here. I need my face. Is there a Chihuahua in the house?
No.
I see him. I see him. Doing good. As long as hello. Maybe you should get up in your chair with the tree, so I don't have to worry about you getting out the door. I have no idea how many people are here. So I'm actually gonna pass this around. I'm gonna pass this around and have everybody like sign it. Give me like a name and number. I need to have something to set it on.
You know, a little bit more on the bar.
If you don't want to put your phone number, give me like an email address. So say a text message coupon, an email coupon, people coming out tonight, and a little. Yeah. So put your name. Don't want to put everybody's name on it. There's no way I would have to do it. But yeah, click on that, and you'll get the little certificate. You went through this, and you'll get coupons to use on the website. Yeah. There's also a little questionnaire, but I think I've only printed out like 25 of them. I may have bit more than I can chew here. I think there's more than 25 people. Yeah, there's probably 30 or 40. But if you're super brainy and you wanna do the quiz, It doesn't go along exactly with the presentation, but if you're like super growing, you want to know should I be ready? The unique questions that are on here are questions that you're gonna want.
Just looking right at me, you're like, we knew.
And I think somebody- And the I believe you, I think the questions that you do want to ask. Yeah, what? I'm gonna leave these.
People say it's very much, it's not how you do it.
I'm gonna leave these up here. While we're talking.
It's nice.
But yeah, we have there. I'm not sure.
Oh, it's mine.
Oh, well, you put them in the chair.
I just glanced at it, it's it.
Are you going to serve the crowd? Crowd surf. He's probably gonna crowd surf. And, if you need a pen, you want to try to fill out the questionnaire, I do that.
All right, get first pick. We probably need to put this out of me.
You don't want another one of these?
Oh, I gave up the paper. Oh, well, I guess I can read it off the screen. So I did look up earlier a brief history of autoflowers on the AI. And I'm actually willing to share that with you guys as well, because I found it kind of interesting that Mephisto popped up in there right away. Now, this probably will not show up on the YouTube channel. It's just showing up on our screen. Oh yeah, I can make it show up. No, it's too much trouble. it's too much. I'll do it. I'll do it.
Again, girl. You did.
All right. Now it shows up on the StreamYard. Okay. So it autoflowering cannabis is relatively, new to most of this culture and growing. It's not new to the planet. It's been around for a long, long time. It just so happened that finally people were, traipsing around in places where it was really, really cold and it doesn't get dark in the wintertime or in the summertime, and found cannabis. It's like, hey, is this the same? And they tried it and they're like, well, but it doesn't get you high. It looks like weed, it smells like weed, smokes like weed, but it doesn't get you high. So they brought those plants, the ruderalis, down to North America and to Sweden and Spain and a bunch of different places. And they started breeding, hybridizing them in with popular sativas and indicas. Which ones that came out were lowrider. Lowrider was not great. Are we at that point on here? Yeah, initially they were low in THC, undesirable for recreational use. The in the 1990s and early 2000s started to breed, to work with them a little bit. The first notable strain, lowrider, developed by the Joint Doctor in the early 2000s. It was a cross between Ruderalis, Northern Lights, and Williams Wonder. The THC was really, really low. It was not a good plant either. The buds were like really airy. It was almost like a Dr. Grinspoon type, if anybody's ever heard of one of those, where it grows like literally one little pod and then moves down the stem and grows another little pod on the others. It's the worst looking foxtail type. It's way past a foxtail situation. We should probably mute that or something. Is the echoes bothering you guys? But autos have come a whole long way. The first cannabis ruderalis was classified in 1924. So it's been around for a long time. It's been in patent medicines. It was in all the snake oils, before we had the FDA and our one molecule pharmacology rule where everything had to be reduced to a single molecule, cannabis was in tons of medicines. It's still good for you. It's still very, very good for you. The lowrider was 2 came out 2005 to 2007. It was improved a little bit, had a better potency, had a better yield, had a better structure. It was a better, but it wasn't that good. Dutch Passion came around 2009 to 2012 and started doing really revolutionary work, taking it to the next level. And then Mephisto came out in around 2010, and they just blew the ceiling off of it. They took it to a level that like nobody ever thought they'd reach. Um, and then out of Mephisto has come like Daz at Night Owl. I think didn't the Rockbud guy work on it too? I'm pretty sure the Rockbud guy had something to do with them. But if you go to any good autoflower breeder or autoflower breeder website and research the strains, you're going to go back to a Mephisto strain. It's not probably going to take you 3 generations to get there. It'll be grandpa, great grandma at the very, very most. But all roads lead back to Mephisto with autoflowers. There's no way around it. They perfected it and were the best in the world and probably still are, but I'm trying. I'm up there. I'm trying. The world record THC is Mephisto. It's a double grape that's bred by them, but grown by me. So, and we crossed it a lot. And maybe the ones we had in the parking lot would even beat it. You don't know without lab testing. You really don't know. So the handheld testers are nice, but their accuracy they tell you is between 15 to 20%. Well, I mean, 15 to 20%. If you purchase anything lately, that you'll know that's a significant part of it. A fifth. The lab tests want to say like 12% variance or something. Yeah, it's still not ideal, but at least you can send the same samples off to 3 different labs. Take an average is what I would normally do. Yeah, because you can't. And it's different. The plant's a volatile organic compound. At every minute, every day, it's changing. The cannabinoids and the terpenes are having this chemical mixture in there, and they're doing stuff. Take hash, roll it into a ball, put it up for 12 years, crack it open. There's cannabinoids and terpenes inside of that don't even exist in the plant. They were combined and made through chemical processes over time with the absence of oxygen and light. Yeah, crazy stuff. So yeah, they said 2010 goes straight to Mephisto. Today's autoflowers says some reaching 25% plus. Mephisto's reached a little higher than that. These strains tested have consistently been 25, 26, 27. A couple of 30. I've had a couple of people get close to the record. I think triple double dosage is the highest one so far to date. But I would expect orange rum dosey to test higher than that one. For sure. We just haven't had it tested yet. What's their conclusion? They've gone from low THC novelty strains to high potency, high yielding, fast growing plants that are a staple in cannabis cultivation. And as breeding technology advances, we will get stronger, faster, and more resilient. That's the spot right now. We made them strong. We made them terpy. We made them super potent and super terpy. Now the focus is on, can we make them resistant? Resistant to pests, resistant to molds, resistant to drought, resistant to temperature change, resistant to stress. The biggest problem with autoflowers, and you having a little bitty one, is it's stressed out. Overwatering it, starting it in a really small container. It's not so much that it's in a small container, it's that it's going to be dry, wet, dry, wet, dry, wet, which means it has no happy medium ever. And a plant that's never happy is not going to thrive and grow. But if you can get it into just a moist environment, that means not wet. Like when you touch it, it shouldn't be wet. But if you put it to your face, it should feel damp. Damp is perfect. Anything that's got more water than damp is drowning. definitely drowning. And that whole, that dry back period, autos don't need that kind of stress. They really don't. But we're talking about the history, not the growing. So, all right, let's get back over here to the presentation that we're supposed to have up here. Oh boy, I messed it up, and now I have to go back. Is this why everybody watches this? Hey, Dale, Black Lopez, Sherry Ellison, and Dustin Wilson are all watching this on YouTube. And I hope I'm not embarrassing myself into one of those people who's in the room. I know at least two of them are not here. Okay. Oh, I'm gonna go back. I wasn't there yet. Okay, so it's not good, didn't stop. Darn it. This one's right. This one's right. Okay. Differences between photo periods and auto flowers. Photo periods are more forgiving, definitely. Why is this going backwards? I'm sorry, y'all. I really suck at this. On one screen, it says one thing. Is it there? No, it doesn't. It's this internet is so laggy. That's why. Oh, no, it isn't. It's because I have two of these. It's because there's two of them. All right. There. Now it's paused. So the difference between autoflowers and photo periods. Autoflowers flower automatically at a certain age. That age can be anywhere between 3 and 5 weeks. The determining factor on that is how much stress they're under. If they're under a lot of stress, they're going to start flowering early. If they are not under a lot of stress, if they're under optimal growing conditions, then they're going to go ahead and take it up to that 5th week before they even start to bud out. Now, whether you're at week 3 or week 5 makes a difference on the end date. People say I was done early. People say mine went longer. It depends on how long you can keep that veg part of it going. The longer there's guys out there that are really, really practiced up that are growing these autoflowers out to 100 days, 110 days, giant monsters. Um, it was, I think, 89 days for the Garley locks. That was 585 grams in hydro. And then the triple double dosage G that just came in at 622 grams was an 85-day. So going that extra 10 days, 2 weeks even, did give them a boost on the yield, but they took some risks. They did take some risks. But that's the same with both photo periods and autoflowers. It doesn't matter if you flower them for too long, they will try to herm out. It's called rhodolization. It just happens. It's menopause for plants. They can't help it. They get a couple hairs on their chin. Next thing you know, they're making babies. It just happens. No, neither one of those were. They were just let them go. These didn't like these on this picture here. I don't know why. These on this picture here definitely just had a little scrog net at the bottom, and they were never bent under or anything. It was just something to hold them up so they would fall over because they'll get top heavy. These right here up there are 1 gallons, but no, those numbers came from one was the first one. The Garley Lux was a 5-gallon hydro bucket, and the other was a 7-gallon swell pot. The tall 7-gallon, the tree pot is what they call it. They call it a tree pot. But there's a lot of advantages to growing autoflowers. You don't have to worry about light leaks and light problems. When you're growing photo periods, one of the biggest issues is you're dark enough. And that sounds crazy because you guys go outside, there's street lights and there's the moon and there's all kinds of stuff, and they still flower. But you're like, you have one little light leak, your zipper's not shut on your tent, and your photo periods can just sit there for weeks and be like, we're not flowering because we can see the hall light on next to the bathroom. We're just not doing it. And then, of course, it can cause problems with flipping sexes, hermaphrodism, weird growth patterns where they might grow stretch way too far, and nobody wants a foot of stick in between each nug. That's just not. That's not. It's not maximizing your square feet or your canopy space. Light penetration is only going to go about 4 foot down, so you want to get as many nugs as close as you can for at least 4 foot of plant mass. That's the goal, is to fill in as many nugs as you can, like on this picture. And I could be over here where it would be. I'll move it over to the next one here. Oh, I went too far. And it is very, very, very laggy. It should go back. Yeah, it's just laggy. And I can't tell my right click from my left click. So you want to choose the right strain for your environment. Everybody's environment's different, and even if you grow in 2 different spaces in your house, and one upstairs, one downstairs, one in the basement, one in the attic, completely different environments. You have completely different types of plants growing. So wherever you're at and you're growing, you're going to want to try a couple different spots. You got to look for the sweet spot. Everybody's house or grow or greenhouse or even backyard garden has the sweet spots, the spots where the things just grow the best. You got to find your sweet spots. You'll have a different spot that's great for like popping seeds, but that's not a spot for you to flower in because it's going to be too warm, it's going to be too humid, and it's probably going to be way too dark. Um, you're going to have spots that are really good for vegetative growth, and that might be some place where you get supplemental sunlight. Anytime you can supplement sunlight into your growth, like unzip that one. If you can put your tent in front of a window, it'll help you in 2 or 3 ways. You can exhaust, vent, or you can bring cool air in through there if you need fresh air. Fresh air is really, really important because you got to have the carbon dioxide. You're growing in a house in the wintertime, you got pilot lights going, things like gas stoves, gas heaters, gas hot water, that kind of thing, then you're probably building up a decent amount of CO2 already. Now it's not a lethal level for you. But those companies don't care. They let us have a little of it. The more gas appliance you got, the more CO2 you got in your house already. And if you have a wood stove or gas fireplace and you burn those, you're going to add lots and lots of CO2 to that in the wintertime. In the summertime, you just take it from outside because there's plenty of it out there. But in the wintertime, you definitely want to be able to add to it. So you got to figure what you're going to grow has to fit into your space, has to fit into your environment. If your environment is super hot and humid all the time, you're going to want to go for sativas because they're going to be more spread out. They're going to have more space between them. They're going to have skinnier leaves. They're going to be able to take the heat better. They're going to be able to take the humidity better. If you got those squat, fat little indicas, they don't take heat and humidity well. In fact, when the leaves touch each other, they sweat in between. And when you pull them apart, there's a wet spot. That wet spot is just great for all kinds of molds, bacteria, bugs. Bugs give them a water source. You think spider mites are bad when it's dry in there. Wait till you give them a little something to drink. That's how they get drunk on that water. That's how they start the circus. They go out and build a web everywhere if they got a little bit of something to give them a drink. But the same with ladybugs. If you don't spray your plants down and give your ladybugs a drink, they're leaving because they got thirsty. They won't stay. They gotta have something to drink. But we're gonna want to consider different factors into what you put in your sweet spots. How much space you have vertically, how much space you have horizontally, what kind of grow style that you're going to use. Is it going to be hydroponic? Is it going to be a living soil? Some the way the breeding has gone, it's so compartmentalized, and each breeder has their own different ways. There are some breeders out there that only work with hydroponics. They're in laboratory-like conditions where everything has to be clean. They wouldn't consider bringing in dirt or microbes to their situation. I'm an old hippy dippy grower, so I want to do everything organic and natural, and I don't really want to work that hard. I want to let all the little bugs do most of the work, and I don't want to have to empty pots every time I want to replant. Make a little Here's sprinkle, sprinkle, and wait a couple weeks, let it soak in, and then just plant again. I want to do the regenerative, no till, keep the planet alive, that kind of junk. That's all wonderful, wonderful stuff. Dr. Elaine Ingham is who got me into the hippy dippy soil stuff. She's the soil food web. She came up with that whole concept and looked at a microscope one day and saw that the soil was all alive and crazy, and that became an actual science now. And people are like, "Oh wow, we got to stop dumping salt fertilizer and tilling our fields," and that's getting into mainstream agriculture now. I don't know if they have the no-till revolution going on up here yet, where they're just saying, well, just plant a crop, but then don't pick it. Just just leave it alone for a year. Letting them go fallow. That was a way to restore the natural stuff to the earth. And depending on what you're going to grow, you got to pick your space. There are really good, easy beginner strains. Grimy bubblegum, always going to be recommending this for first-time growers. It's a regular autoflower. That means it's not been feminized. You will have two types of plant. You will have a male plant and you will have a female plant. But the first most important lesson it will teach you is how to tell the difference. And because that's gonna, if you only grow female seeds for your whole life, every time you look at a plant when it's young, you're gonna be like, is that a boy? You don't need that kind of stress in your life. You don't. The growing this is supposed to be cool. It is supposed to keep you happy. You're not supposed to go in there and worry, oh, is it a boy? Is it a boy every day? So grow boys and girls together. You'll know right away what the difference is. You'll be able to spot them like that from across the room forevermore. And you just have to, it's like riding a bike. You just got to do it once and you'll know how to do it forever. So definitely good beginner seed. The terps on it are Trix cereal, so they're super fruity, super uplifting. It's a little bit of a sativa, so it's not going to mold. It's bug resistant. It can handle the fact that you have too much humidity in your grow, and it can even handle the fact that if you don't have a good light. If you have low light conditions, you still get a very nice flower out of this. Some of these are a little bit hungrier. The slapple for sure, and the garlylocks for sure. Garlylocks likes to become a nice big plant. It wants lots of light. It's not necessarily, they say, is it a heavy feeder or a light feeder? It's a heavy feeder, but what they eat is light. It doesn't need lots of nutrients. You don't want to over nutrient. It'll turn really dark green with really purple stems, and then you'll wonder, well, why was it so small? I had so much leaf, and the stalk was this big around, but it was this tall. You don't want that. You want it as soon as they start going. It depends on your grow and your situation. Your sweet spot might require HPS. For HPS, I like the Gavita double-ended ceramic. It's a 1,000-watt light with a ballast built into it. Perfect for like warehouse. You can put them all the way up to the ceiling, and they still grow plants that are sitting on the floor. They have super penetration to them. If the place is high and it's wintertime, you can handle the heat. If you have a greenhouse, you're trying to grow in the wintertime, yes, you want those Gavita double-ended 1,000. If you're in a small enclosed space, you're probably going to want LEDs. I wouldn't even suggest high intensity inside your house unless it's wintertime and you intend to heat your house with that excess heat, because it'll do that. You can put a high intensity discharge light in a tent with an exhaust fan and an 8-inch thing. You can take that thing all the way across the house to your bedroom and hang a blanket and stick it under your door, and it will heat your bedroom all night long. Because I've grown in the desert with a generator, and you take what you got, and if the plants are making heat, we're using it to sleep. That's just the way that's gonna go. It does. You definitely want to exhaust it out or bring in some cool fresh air from outside to balance it out if it gets too hot. I've actually had a lot of time in the wintertime when my house was hot. We were cracking windows and we got exhaust fans going outside. in Colorado, where it's supposed to be cold in the winter. We got snow outside like this, but in my house, the windows are raining. It's thick in here. You know, the wood that's been sitting by the wood stove doesn't want to burn because it's all moist from all the humidity in the house. The dry wood's outside, yes, sir.
You mentioned with the bubble gum, it does not like heat.
It doesn't mind. It doesn't mind if it gets too hot. It doesn't mind if it gets too cold. It has temperature tolerance. It and it's has tolerance to high or low humidity. The thin the thin leaf of the sativas is just better designed to handle low humidity or high humidity because has less surface area. It's less effective. A big fat indica leaf, it's that area of coverage on the leaf that affects it more for hot, cold, humid.
So if they're fat, you're more sensitive to
The fat leaves are a little more sensitive to the heat, but they're good at staying warm because they'll stack on each other and keep that humidity between, which is an insulator. The grimy bubble gum. It can. I mean, greenhouses. We've had them where they were out there when temperatures only get into the mid 60s in the daytime and 40s at night, and they still thrive with some supplemental light. And then we've had them all the way out there in the middle of the summertime when it's 120 all day long in there. And that's if you sprayed the floor down with water, so the humidity is like 80%. They're they're very, very tolerant. They're from two different Mephisto strains. They're from a Hubba Bubba Hayes female, and then an unknown Mephisto that was a pink male. I got lucky to get to kind of work with some of the farm friends and to work with Mitch and Stan a little bit when I first started getting into breeding autos. I was already breeding photos pretty successfully, and so when I first started breeding autos, I'd asked them for their blessing and could I use some of their stuff, and they were like, absolutely, yeah, they were all about it. But you want to pick a strain that's going to be good for your spot.
Similar colors that you use in photo.
I don't even have a meter or read for par on a home grow. In a commercial grow where we have a ton of commercial lights, that's important because you'll have hot spots and you'll have cold spots, and you're trying to get investor money back for every square foot. But on a home grow, it's really not that big a thing. You can actually look at a plant, and the plants that are like, I don't need any more light, or like, I don't need any more light. The plants that are like, give me light, are actually, they're like, okay, let's turn it up a little bit. But you can pretty much tell the ones that are struggling because they're hot and they're tired and they're beat down because they've had too much to eat. They've been just, force fed too much of the light. But definitely backing off a little is more, and then making them want it. Having too little is way anything, food or water or nutrients. It's better to have too little than it is to have too much. Yeah, you can't run them 12-12. 18-6 is the minimum. 20 to 24 is good, and 24 all the time is not a problem, especially in the wintertime. But if you're running 24, turn it down a little bit. They don't got to eat it all right now. It's a buffet. Let them sit there and eat like hors d'oeuvres. Don't throw cheeseburgers down their throat all day. They can't eat those all day. Slow step up. And you want to keep them a little bit hungry for the water and a little bit hungry for the light. Keep raising the light. Keep raising the light. And they'll chase it. They'll go for it. And you want to get some of that. You need the structure of autoflower. It's the absolute opposite of growing a photo period. A photo period I can start in a shot glass. And then I can transplant it to a little Dixie cup. And then I can transplant it up to a solo cup. And then I can transplant it into a little pint container. And I can transplant that thing every 3 or 4 days and drive its growth by transplant. Autos you cannot drive by transplant. And in fact, it does nothing but slow them down. Even if you have lots and lots of success with transplanting and don't ever see transplant shock, you may not see it. You may not see the effect. But if you hadn't done it, it would have been a bigger plant with more yield. You slowed it. Anytime it has to get used to a new spot, new pot, grow new roots, you've slowed the system. You want to keep it pumping all the time, all the time. Keep it wanting water and pump it. You want to keep a dehumidifier running all the time. If you're constantly removing moisture from the air, then you're doing it right. You need to be getting gallons. You need to get back every gallon you put on. When you put 5 gallons of water on your plants, you need to have 5 gallons in your dehu to dump out. It should be a system where you give it and they take it and give it right back. So for the germination and seedling stage, you've only got 2 weeks. That's it. 10 days, 2 weeks. That's it. That's all they're going to be a baby. So every second, every day counts. 1 day of the life of an autoflower is 1 year of the life of an average human. So if you don't have a year to waste, they don't have a day to waste, because that's the equation for it. Yeah, we're talking dog years. Autoflower years is 1 day of their life is 1 year of human life. So just, oh, I was going to water them this morning. Oh, you mean 6 months ago? Yeah. I don't know why they're not happy. They just don't grow. Yeah, moist, not wet. They can't be wet. And if your soil is really spongy and prone to being wet, then just spray it with a little spray mister. And don't try to ever soak it down, because you're going to drown everything that's in there and drive out all of the oxygen. That whole the way we grow photo periods, and you water to 20% runoff. Don't do that. You'll kill autoflowers with that 20. You don't want no runoff. And in fact, you want to water them to within like 20-25% moisture. You don't want to give them a full 100% soak down. You just want to give them a little. It'll trickle in. It'll go where it needs to go. A little often goes a lot farther than turning it on and off. And the dry back period doesn't really help them much. You can in hydroponics with the flood and drain, do that dry back, and that will work. But I had way better success with the constant drip and circulation. The barrel underneath the table. The barrel underneath the table, so that each table has its own nutrient barrel with an air stone in it, and the drippers just run all the time. Drip, 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 drain right back to the bottom all the time. Yeah.
We're not mowing the lawn down there, you know what I mean?
Yep, absolutely. There's a bunch of germination techniques, tons of them. Nature says just put it on the dirt and spray it with water, but you really don't even have to bury them. You can just sprinkle on top. They'll grow. They will absolutely just make a little root if the soil's moist enough and the temperature is right. They'll do their thing. They don't need any light for that stage. All they need is optimal moisture and temperature conditions. Optimal moisture and temperature is going to be around, I'm going to say 70% moisture, because you don't want, 100% is dripping wet, maybe 50% moisture. If you're using paper towel method, squeeze all the water out of the paper towel. And then when you think, oh no, it's too dry, you can touch it up to your cheek and it's still going to feel wet. That's perfect. If you use something like a Riot Cube or a Rapid Rooter, they're a little peat moss, little cube. Those work really well. Just don't shove the seed in all the way in the hole. Just barely, about as deep as it is wide. It just needs to be barely covered. So you never make a hole to plant a seed. You just make a little dent with your thumb and then smooth it over.
Cut the bedding off.
Oh, if you're using the ones that swell up, the peat moss, absolutely cut the net. You can leave them in that little net until they sprouted. Before you plant them, he's right. You need to take the scissors and cut that net off. No, they don't break down. They say that, yeah, they do break down, but it takes 2 years, and we only have 75 days. Yes. Dampening off is when your little seedling comes up and his little his little body, his main stem, perfectly white, and it kind of looks like a sprout, a Brussels sprout or something, right? Bean sprout. Yeah, it looks like a miniature bean sprout. What'll happen is next to the soil, it'll get a little brown ring, and it'll get skinnier. And that's a pythium rot. It's a soil microbe that happens from having too much moisture. So when you have your little seedlings, you don't ever want to water up to them. Plus, if you water up to them, 9 times out of 10, the water hits them and they lay down. If they lay down on you, you got to do a little kind of a, you got to do kind of a little volcano of soil up around them, and then just water around the outside of the volcano from then on. As the plant grows, that volcano is going to disappear. You won't even see it after a little while. When it gets bigger, you'll be just throwing water in there. But when it's a little guy, you can't take the tidal wave, so don't water right up next to it. And then don't water it a lot. A little plant that's that size doesn't need more than a cup of water, even if it's in a 10-gallon pot. Only needs a little water in that one spot. If you pre-moistened that soil when you mixed it up so that all of the microbes can be alive, if it's a damp soil to start with, it's going to take 2 weeks to dry out anyway, to dry out completely. And if you just keep adding little bits, and as it grows, you add a little more water, a little more water. But be plant specific. A tiny plant needs a tiny amount of water. That you're not watering the soil, you're watering the plant. The soil you got started, and now if it dries out completely, that's the issue. You want to spray off the top of it, but you don't want to soak the whole pot when you only have a tiny plant. It'll cause it to be too wet for too long, and it'll just won't grow. So they'll stay little.
I use jugs in my humidity dome.
Yeah, just go around the outside of it. That's perfect. A lot of people use clear plastic cups over the top of them, and that's perfect too. That way you're not watering onto them at all. Yep. And a wand sprayer, a pump sprayer like you use for pesticides is really good for watering little ones, but you just spray around them and go to the next one, spray around it. The best things that you can grow in, it doesn't matter, has to have lots of air. It doesn't matter if it's a soil, it doesn't matter if it's a rock wool cube, it doesn't matter if it's just lava rocks, clay pellets. The key is air, 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 air. So whatever soil or dirt you're using, even if you're just using dirt from the backyard, you want to add the air part. You want to add pumice, perlite, lava rock, something that's got a bunch of air pockets in it so that it will drain away quickly and pull in fresh air when water does go through it. You want to make sure that there's going to be channels for that water to go. Otherwise, it's going to sit on the top, puddle up like clay, and never get down to where it's useful. And if you have that kind of situation, if your soil is really compacted, what you'll notice is all your roots are growing at the top of the soil. There'll be 2 inches at the top that just have all kinds of gnarly roots. You'll be like, oh, I'm doing so good. Look at all these roots. And when you turn it upside down and put it out of the pot, you find that this much of it didn't have hardly any roots at all. All the roots are at the top because the soil wasn't draining well enough for the water to go through. So the roots are going to grow wherever the water's at. If it's more at the bottom or if it's more at the top. Bottom watering is ideal for auto flowering plants because if they're butt chugging, they're only taking what they need. The rest will sit there and you can shop back it away. Fill up their little tray, let them suck what they want. If they haven't taken it in an hour, they're not taking it. You can suck it up with the shop vac and be done with it. Don't leave it sitting there. You'll have all kinds of gnats and mosquitoes and algae, and you'll grow all sorts of stuff if you just leave standing water in your grow, and it'll spike your humidity. It won't be good at all. So definitely the water practices and making sure that you have a good aeration agent to be at least 25 to 30% of your soil. Even with like the Bio 365, I love that soil. But it's too heavy and it's too compact and stays wet too long for babies. I mean, it's great like out in a big raised bed and you're throwing in 1-gallon plants that are already established. It's great. It's no problem. But to start the little babies, they have a little bit of issue with it being wet and being compacted. So you want to add something, fluff it up really good. Rice hulls is a really super awesome way to fluff stuff up on the cheap, and it doesn't like destroy the planet. Perlite, not so much. The pumice is okay. Let me go change to the next slide. If I knew how long it took for me to say this stuff, I could have it set up so that it would go at the right at the right time all the time. No, probably not. So the vegetative stage, you've only got 2 to 4 weeks. You had that, that 10 days to 2 weeks to be a baby seedling. All you got left before it flowers is maybe 2 to 4 weeks left. If you're lucky, if you can stretch it, you'll get to that fifth week before they flower. But it's got to be really, really going. At that stage, you're watering uh, at least like 6 times a day in small amounts or on some kind of automatic watering system to be able to drive that kind of growth. And you're going to be supplementing CO2. You're going to have super good air circulation. Air circulation is important for so many nutrients. People are like, but I put all the food on them. I'm like, yeah, but you don't have a fan. If you don't have a fan and there's no air circulation, doesn't matter how much cal mag you put on it, calcium can't uptake. It happens to just need this situation where air flies across the leaf and then that pulls stuff into the chain reaction that happens for calcium to be uptick. And without the airflow, no calcium. Doesn't matter how much is in the ground. Uh, Nitrogen has some similar properties to why it can be there and they won't take it up. They call it locked out. Too many other nutrients are in there. The pH is off. This sort of thing, that sort of thing. If conditions are right, you're driving it good. Everything's clean. No spider mites, no broad mites, no funguses, no pythium rot. The root rot is caused from pythium. Botrytis is another really bad one, a bad rot. It's a brown fuzzy mold. There's one that's clear and slimy, and I don't remember the name of it, but it infects cloners when you're doing photo periods and you're doing a lot of cloner, and you have one, and it also infects some aeroponic units. It can get into your hydroponics. It's just sort of a microbe that's slimy that eats up all your nutrients and starves your plant and keeps anything from being able to get to your roots. Some strains are a lot more resistant. So the autoflowers are going to need much lower nitrogen. And if you want to get the high THC, you want to go to lower nitrogen. Nitrogen will drive your growth. It'll give you more stems. It'll give you more leaves. But stems and leaves are not what we came here for. So I would rather have a shorter plant with better internodal spacing with colas on it all the way down than to have a really tall plant that's got a nug here, a nug here. No, all those sticks. Kindling's nice to have for a little while, but that stuff piles up. You end up with big old piles of pot sticks outside your house. You end up, and if you don't reuse and recycle your soil, you'll end up with giant piles of used up dirt. Lots and lots of that. Yeah, if you're changing your soil out all the time, you'll end up with tons of huge plants. But with autoflowers, you definitely want to avoid the transplant shock. So put it right in that final pot. Wherever it's going to die is where it needs to be born. Don't do that. Like people I'm super guilty of this. I did this for so many years. Give the plants a quarter turn every day. Right. Try to keep them balanced because the light's over there, so that means this plant over here must need to turn around every. Not necessary. It's not. It makes it grow straight for that day, and then it curves. If you ever done it, it's a losing battle. It's a losing battle every single day. It's doing the same thing, and it doesn't matter if you turned it yesterday or not. It's still turned that way, and it's really just you exercising your back. But if you are giving them a quarter turn, go ahead and give them a little lift and see if they're light. If you lift on a plant and it goes, whoo, give it water. If you lift on a plant and say, leave it alone. And you can do it with one finger, with 1 gallon pots, 2 fingers with 5 gallon pots. If you can tip a pot with 2 fingers, it needs water. That's just the way it is.
Flowers need a little less nitrogen. Give us an example of that flower I realize that the nutrient levels are going to go up and down parts from it. Well, you start with like a 10 10N.
No, I start with that bio flower. It's on the bottom shelf. You want to read that bio flower? I think it's 543. It's got a carrot on 542 it is. I like the 542. So I start with a 542 and a worm casting, which is like a 001. So I end up with a 543 as a start, as a base. And then I will do the bloom booster during bloom. The one I'm using now because I wanted to get one that was all organic. I'd been using synthetic bloom boosters. I'd been using, dumb stuff like Ching or whatever. But I'm now on to the pork chops flower stack attack. And as a bloom booster, this one's reading is 1/415.
Flowers page or
I would, just because of what this is derived from is derived from good stuff. So there's a couple different types of calcium in here, there's silica in here, there's kelp extract. It's got some other beneficial stuff to the flower. I know. I have a thing of that lotus booster home too.
In some ways, some
I mean, I did. I used it, and I noticed that I had much harder nugs, but the terps were not as good. I used that lotus. It's in the little purple.
right.
Yeah, with a little scoop and all that. Yeah. So I used that on the last orange corals, and the nugs were rock hard. But the flavor was not flavor.
You know, certification. So all of it, everything you need to do, come back, next what they always think. Say what you say.
Cut it back. If they look hungry, then they are hungry.
Yeah, so go in that comfort zone and you were saying, and just with that, and like,
The terpinator does help with terps a lot, but both of those are non-organic, man-made salts. They're mining. They're killing the planet to make. I mean, it's good stuff. It's good stuff, but there's all kinds of PGRs, plant growth hormones, growth regulators. There's a lot of stuff that we can put on plants, but we don't know what that's going to do to our bodies. And basically, we are what we smoke. That stuff goes literally in our lungs, in our stomachs, on our skin. I mean, we shampoo with it. We got the oil and the capsules. In my house, we're all infused, and everything around us is infused. So whatever is there doesn't need to have like the forever chemicals in it. Yeah, there's the forever chemicals. Organic actually tastes better. The yield is lower. The flowers are fluffier. You can break them up with your fingers. You don't need a sledgehammer and a pair of scissors to get the best part. But it just seems tastier and more the way that nature intended, and that's how you get those high test results. The world record plant double grapes were not 2 foot tall. Completely nitrogen starved. We didn't even. I worked for a commercial grow. They didn't have any more blue. They didn't have any more grow newts. They only had bloom newts, and it was all salt based. And my deal when I would get to a new farm is I'm gonna use up all this junk you got laying around here. This nutrient, and that spray, and that spray. I'm gonna use all this stuff up. If it's usable. If it's not usable, I'm gonna throw it out. I'm gonna tell you this is toxic. This has to go, and we can't use that. No, we're not using anymore because azadirachtin poisoning is a real thing, and it'll make you puke and puke and puke. And it's not cool to have too much neem on your plants. Any at all, really. If you put it on latent flower, all your plants taste like burnt popcorn. That's a brilliant flavor for terpene. It's almost as good as the sulfur bud that tastes like matches. I've done both these mistakes. I know these things from experience. It's not oh, this could happen. No, that happens. That's what it tastes like. But you want to make sure that whatever you put on the plant is something that you know what it is. Don't put anything on there without knowing what it is, knowing what's in it, what does too much look like? What does too little look like? Especially if you're using like chemical nutrients, man-made stuff in the bottles with the big high numbers. You need to know what the toxicity looks like before you even apply it. Because a lot of times people put it on, they put too much, the plant goes to shit, and they're like, oh no, it didn't work. It looks worse. It must need more. And that's never the answer. More is never the answer. Cannabis is not a greedy plant. She's giving and loving and abundant and multiplying. And really, you could sit there and give it nothing but water, and she'll be a little yellow all the way through, but she'll be the best smoke you ever smoked. She just will produce no matter what you give to
You use that one more time, like, that.
her. The nutrient companies are all going to get mad at me now. All going to get mad at me. All right, let me get over to our. So, yeah, we talked about the lighting. We talked about, organic options for sure. Yeah, I could probably even do this without this. I just have to keep on the right topics. I have to wait because it's laggy to see if it actually moves
You
it.
mentioned that neem oil can have a negative health effect. I ran across one report that peppermint oil also has a negative
So
effect, but I haven't found any other.
I avoid all oils, period, on cannabis because oil is systemic. It gets inside the plant and it never comes out. It will be there, even if you don't put it on, and 2 years later you cut clones from that mom that you cut from that other one, from that other one. It's a systemic situation. Once it's in the system, it's going to stay in the system. Now, time and making more plant matter can thin it down, can make it less. But when you go to make buds out of that, you do any kind of extraction at all, you're going to extract the cannabis oil and the oil you put onto it as well. So you get peppermint oil in your extraction, your dabs will be really runny, and you're like, why can't I purge this? Well, you did purge it, but it's full of peppermint oil, or Scoop to the rescue. No oils. I do no oils. I do no poop bigger than a worm. So no birds, bats, fish generally. Um, just because they're a little bit bigger and they can have some toxic stuff in their poop. Yeah.
That's an interesting rule. No food bigger than a worm.
No poop bigger than a worm. I used to be completely vegan, a vegan grower. What's that?
All the worms up here in Minnesota.
the worms up here in Minnesota count. This is not moving. I don't understand. I mean, it does seem like it's moving, but it's not moving. It's just moving the picture around. All right. Let me go back here to where it was and try hitting play on it. And my phone is dinging. These are the very, very early first pre-flowers that was showing. Maybe that's why this is not moving along to the next screen. We'll let it play and see what happens. It might catch up, and then I might catch up. But so this is going to be the end of your vegetative phase. This is like week 1. You're going to start seeing all those little pre-flowers coming out. And hopefully you have a nice big bushy plant like this. I don't know what strain that is. This is just a video going. The grimy bubble gum. Yeah, no, I'm pretty sure this tent right here looks like the orange crosses. But these are going to be your little female flowers. That right there is orange rum dosey dub. I remember that one. Because it just went so much flower to get started.
Can't see the darkening of the veining on those leaves. Is that that a sign of the pictures here? Is that the little new growth? You see some of the videos where the things are a little bit darker.
Right. New growth is going to be a little bit lighter in color, but it's lighter in color uniform. So when the veins are dark and the rest of it is light, we call that phenochlorosis. And that usually comes from phosphorus. It's a little bit of a stress. These you can see have the tip of the leaf right there. These, they are at the max food that you can really give them. If I fed them anything else, you would see problems from it. All right, now we're into the flowering stage. Oh, it's already past it. My goodness. See, that's why we're not using it that way. It's already gone to say thank you. But there's a bunch of lag. That's a nice flower, though. Thank you. That's a beautiful autoflower. All right, there's vegetative. I think it might be right around here.
The stem also?
So that used to be a hard and fast rule, but now they've bred so much of the anthocyanins into the plant that we have so much in plants. Like the grimy bubblegum has a 10% pink, bright pink pheno, like permanent marker pink. It goes actually all the way from dusty rose to permanent marker highlighter pink. And it can show up anywhere from the stem, the leaves, the pistils, the buds, and it can start from seedling stage all the way to the end. You can be at the very end that you get like a dusty rose pink fade. But those are those grimies are something else. Let me see if I can catch it. I didn't know that I inserted a video right there. I really thought that was just a picture. And now it wants to show the video each time. The deeper pot can give you a little bit longer veg time. It's really an age thing, but it's an age / stress thing. So if they're under a lot of stress, it's going to happen early age. If they don't have any stress and unlimited resources, then it's going to happen at a later age. So the taller pot gives it more resources for a longer time and encourages it to flower later. But that doesn't mean that if you're in a tall pot and you've overwatered it, it's not going to be stunted out. The tall pot doesn't solve all problems. Oh, I've missed it again already. All right.
There you go.
There we go. We found it. We caught it. All right. So the flowering stage is going to start at week 3. Oh, I'm terrible at all this. The flowering stage is going to start as early as week 3. And if it does, don't worry about it because your plant's still going to double in size, most likely, during flower. So if it's only this tall and it's started to flower, don't freak out because it's going to continue to grow for most of the flowering stage. It'll only actually quit getting like taller around the last 2 weeks, maybe. I mean, they'll just keep going and keep going. On autos. Yeah. No, that's not on photos. On photos, you got 3 weeks of flower where they stretch and they double, and on that 4th week they just settle in and they ride it out. But autos are willing to stretch and grow all the way up till the 5th, 6th week of flower, and they're only going to flower for 7 weeks. Excellent. It depends on the conditions. We regularly have them over 5 foot tall at my house, and in the greenhouse up over 7 foot tall. Even. And that's some giant autoflowers in with 24-hour light, 24-hour supplemental, drip with fertigation, with that food that really makes them grow. With organics, I like to keep them right at the 4 to 5 foot range because that even when they're in their pot, they're up a little. They're not up so high that I can't see from. You definitely want to be monitoring. But when you start, you're gonna have to watch for your pre-flowers. If your pre-flowers can come in a few different ways, they can come super thick and super straight and white, or they can be really thin. It's a strain dependent thing, whether or not you have a really thick hair, whether it's long and skinny or short. That the difference is these little trichome hairs can vary wildly amongst different varieties. And you'll get used to seeing, if you've grown the same strain over and over, that there's going to be usually four, no, two for sure, but no more than four different distinct phenotypes of it. So if you grow lots of garlic locks, you already know that there's a green garlic locks that's so frosty and it's got a funk to it that's a little bit sweet and fruity. And there's that purple garlic locks, and it's straight GMO all day long. It's the funky one, the purple one. The purple one doesn't have as much frost, but the light green version of the garlic locks is it's not the photo like the other one. That other one that has all the different purples in it and colors. You break it up and it's all different colors, and that one's cool. That one's visually satisfying. But that green one's the one to smoke. Definitely the one to smoke. So you got to learn to recognize your pre-flowers. And I should have put up a couple of boy flowers, but I didn't. These are all female flowers. But at this point, as soon as you start to see these two little hairs, not when they have the whole fluffy bunch on the top like the cottontails, but as soon as you start to see these two little hairs, they're going to be 2 or 3 nodes down from the very top. Usually the second or third one, not the top one, but the second or third one below that is going to have this first set of two little hairs. As soon as you see those, it's time to throw on the bloom newts. It's time to start giving the extra phosphorus, back off on the nitrogen. I mean, you don't have time. A day in an autoflower is a year for you. So, and then like from morning to night is 6 months. There's just really no time to waste. But if you learn to drive these, and it's a lot of shifting gears. It's like driving a tractor or an 18-wheeler. You got 17 gears and 50 levers over here, and the boom goes up and down, and the bucket retracts, all of that stuff. That's driving autoflower versus just like cruising in a Cadillac. That's a photo period. Photo periods can go anywhere you want to go. We can go backwards, we can go forwards. In fact, we can just sit here and park till you're ready. You can literally park an autoflower and make it, or a photo period, and make it just wait until you're ready. The autoflower is completely different. Once you turn it on, you have to go all the way to the end. There's no waiting. There's no pulling over. There's no ordering supplies or getting more nutrients off the net. It's have it ready before you need it, and make sure you got a dry space ready. If you go all the way through this and you flower out these plants, that's going to be on the next slide. I better not. I'm not going to get ahead of myself. But adjust your nutrients, manage humidity. At this point, you have to add extra fans. You made it through veg without extra airflow. You've got to have it now because the calcium cannot come, and the calcium is all the calcium that it can get is going to be going to make these buds. Just it's the same with pregnant women. We need a ton of calcium to make the baby. They need a ton of calcium to make the buds, and they're going to use up everything that's in them and start to show a deficiency if you don't double up. Most plant foods are made for most plants. Cannabis is not most plants. It wants lots and lots of calcium. And the autoflowering plant, I double my count at this stage. I just double whatever it says to put on there. Yeah, whatever it says. I start it with the one dose as by the bottle, but the second dose within 7 to 10 days is the double dose. And from then on, I give it double the amount. And magnesium is not bad to the Epsom salt is what magnesium is, magnesium sulfate. It is not bad to give plants extra magnesium. You're not going to overdose them on it. Magnesium is not going to cancel out other nutrients and lock out something. Magnesium is actually like the euro for nutrients. The plant can take it and trade it for any other nutrient it wants. It's a better value than the dollar. It's like a euro. It's super, super awesome element for the plant to have. It can trade it for any other mobile nutrient and some immobile nutrient. Yep. And then this is where you're going to want to do your first defoliation. Get those big extra leaves out. Get all your fans going. Make sure that your uptake that calcium by getting lots and lots of airflow and maintain that humidity, because this is when it's going to start getting, the windows are fogging up and it's starting to, it feels to you, it feels good at first. You're like, oh, this is nice in here. We have humidity. But it'll get to the point where you're like, oh my God, we have humidity. It's like, it's bad in here. My house gets way too humid. I run 5 different humidifiers in my house, and they run constantly, and they drain into big buckets, and I just have to keep emptying. And I know, and I go by that rule of thumb. We use reservoirs as well to water the plants. So if this autopot reservoir holds 20 gallons of water, I know that when I fill that with 20 gallons of water, 20 gallons of water is going somewhere. When it's empty, that water's still in here. There's no magic trick, okay? The water is still in the room with you. All the water you pour on them stays in that room with you. If you don't take it out somehow, it's going to be in there. It'll be all your dry amendments will be hard as rock. Now, powdered sulfur. The powdered sulfur does come in handy. It's a good fungicide. It's a good insecticide. You can put it on top of the soil. It's absolutely essential to add extra sulfur if you're trying to grow skunky strains, because it's an essential element in making the terpenes that make the skunk smell. So people can try to grow skunk all they want. And if there's no sulfur in their regimen, they'll never get the terp for it, because they just didn't have the right element for the plant to produce and start that chain reaction, just chemical changes one after another. It's a chemistry. It's an entire chemistry machine in there that's just making all kinds of different elements. I think there's probably over 250 identified proteins already, and I don't know how many cannabinoids. They're testing for up to 50 in some places, so they're coming out with new ones all the time. And it's not that they came out; they're not invented; they're just discovered. They were always there. The THCV molecule, the THCV is one that's fairly new, and it's new to autoflowers because it's always been a minor cannabinoid and not really enough to make a difference. Durban poison has always had a lot of it in it, and it's in some of those South African strains. And what it was is that weed that you smoked back in the day that got you all talkative and you just couldn't shut up. Or that one that made you get up and clean your whole house. You're going to rearrange a closet because you smoked a joint. What kind of weed was that? That was THCV. They called it GSD, get shit done weed. Yeah, it didn't say, not German Shepherd, get shit done weed is what it was. And it used to be quite a bit of it around in the 70s. But then, we bred out everything for THC. There was a minute there, they were like, oh, THC has been discovered. And then they were like, oh, well, that's the only one we want. And we just, as plant breeders and selectors, they selected out all the CBD from the plants. They selected out, we just want Delta 9, Delta 9, Delta 9, Delta 9. If anybody said Delta 9, you're like, you got to put something back in now. Even smoking dabs, a lot of times I'm like not satisfied with dabs. I'm like, can we put that on the joint? There's just something's missing from this experience. The dabs alone don't do it for me. So I roll dab joints. I roll the dabs on the paper and roll it up and smoke it that way. And that's the only way that I can get all the different effects. Yeah, Creeper's not really around too much. The giggles are gone. So the giggles and grins are gone too. It's been so long since I had to hold my face like this. But like literally, there was weed that you could not stop smiling, and your face hurt so bad you had to hold your face like this. Because it was like a muscle reaction. Yeah, we're looking for some of those strains, but you know who got those genetics? No, the government. They've raided us over and 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 taken all of our stashes so many times that then they hand them out to their little universities, and you get down to like Mississippi and they go something that's called like G13. They don't even know what it is. It's the 13th one they stole from somebody. I'm sorry, we're getting all political on it now. But yeah, so a lot of those genetics are gone. The skunk is gone because none of us wanted to go to federal prison. You could smell a skunk plant in veg. Like by week 2, you knew you had a skunk plant. Oh, you bumped it when you watered it? That's a skunk plant. And in fact, you pulled it out and killed. We killed skunk plants like they were spider mite infested, uh, like they were males. We pulled them more than we pull males. Most people look at a male and they're like, oh, you can't have that, and they want to kill it right away. But the skunk was the same way. We killed off that genetic. It's around somewhere. The government's probably got it. They've confiscated it, I'm sure by now. Let me see if we can make it go to the next part without too much. Because I don't think that these little screens play for very long. But yeah, when you get to the beginning of that flower, you don't have to change your light. You don't have to change your light cycle, but you do want to increase the intensity. Rule of thumb for cannabis plants is generally double the light for flower that you need for veg. With autos, it's not that drastic, but you do need to bump it up 20, 25%. You don't need to double it. You don't add 2 lights, but if you have a light with a dial, you definitely don't want to turn it up all the way in veg. You want to start it at 20, 25% is their seedling. And as they start chasing it, you start raising it. Every time you raise it up an inch, you can raise it 10%. Every time you raise it up, you raise it another 10%. By the time it gets up here, you're at 50, 60%. When you go into flower and you stop raising it, you still go in and bump it up extra 10% every week. Just do it gradual. If you do it all at once and really quick, they'll look like you slapped them. They get mad. They get upset. They feel it. They feel the pain. I'm on the wrong screen, so. But I'm starting to learn this thing. It's going back and forth. I don't know if people are still watching on YouTube or not, but we'll all be able to go back and watch this over again. So, harvesting, drying, and curing. Once you recognize that your plant is done, and your plant is done generally when the recommended time of the breeder says. Everybody knows they grow longer, they live longer, they're not going to die on that day. That's when they're optimally ripe. Don't pick anything that you consume at the end of its life cycle. Almost everything that we pick to consume, unless it's a seed, that one you have to wait for the plant to go to seed and be done. But anything that you're gonna pick, you don't wait for the avocado to be black and mushy to pull it off the tree. You don't wait for the peaches to turn brown. You don't wait for the bananas to turn brown. You pick things when they're in their ripest, their most flavorful, their most nutritious, that sort of thing, the most desirable, when they have the best shelf life, that sort of thing. So we pick buds, not flowers. You can grow the plant past buds, and those buds open up, and they're like, "Oh, my plant's putting on so much weight," and I'm like, "Oh, no, it's you. You had density. You did. You had it, and you went past it because you thought it was getting bigger, and now it's actually losing density every single day as this flower opens." So pick firm, fragrant, young buds. If a plant looks old and worn out, and beat up, it probably needs to go lay down somewhere upside down.
You're late.
It probably needs to go hang upside down somewhere. If it still has lots of green, if you fed it lots of nitrogen, you can let it go even longer because you need to let it use that nitrogen up and get it out of its system. So, but you're still going to end up with fluffy buds if you let it go too long, and you'll end up with seeds because fertilization is just the cannabis plant's last ditch effort to switch its hormones, make a male flower, and produce a seed. If it's gone so long in flower and never been touched, it flips the switch at a certain age. Most breeders tell you to pick before you end up getting seeds. Because if you're going to get seeds out of the stuff they sold you, then everybody gets mad. Oh, it was seedy weed. They were all herms. If you pick way late, that's what you'll get. And you see a lot of guys out there that'll complain and they'll be, oh no. And everybody else is like, no, they've always grown great for me. Well, if you don't follow the directions, you don't always get, the right product in the end. And it's not that they want you to pick extra early so you can buy more seeds. I've heard all sorts of theories on why breeders tell you to pick at 8 weeks or 10 weeks of flower or 9 weeks of flower. They have a little window in there to say 8 to 9 weeks or 11 to 12 weeks. And the reason we put that window in there is that's, in our opinion, when it's been the most fragrant, the most firm, the most fruitful, the most, and have the most potency. You want peak of potency and potential. You don't want to wait until it's on over the hill. Drying and curing, hardest part. Grow the most beautiful plants in the world, giant donkey dicks, not get through the dry and cure. Everything's got fuzzy mold inside of it, smells like hay, tastes like shit, so crispy, so frosty, so beautiful, but so harsh you cannot get it down in a water pipe. This all happens because of problems with the dry and the cure. If you can't keep optimum conditions, which is like 60 degrees or below, 60% humidity. You need it at least 60% humidity. The plant is 80% moisture to start with, and you need to keep 12 to 14% of that for yourself. So you need to dry in a slow way with a very low temperature because that helps slow it down. Any spike in temperature, dry it out real quick. Go in there and throw the space heater on, all of a sudden everything's crunchy on the outside, but it's still wet on the inside. And if you try to do something with it, it's just going to mold. So you need to dry it slow enough that the moisture that's on the inside can make its way through osmosis to the outside. If you dry it fast, it just dries on the outside. You lock the moisture in, you lock in all kinds of chlorophyll and smells and tastes. That whole hay smell thing, that comes also with fresh cut grass. Fresh cut grass, you leave it out there, and then you turn it over, and it's all brown and sunny. That's the exact stuff that makes your weeds smell like hay. So it's a microbial situation that happens when there's too much moisture and too much temperature, no airflow. Don't blow straight on your buds, though. You need airflow in your dry space, but do not blow toward the buds. Blow toward the corner, blow through the ceiling, blow straight at the floor, blow anywhere but at that line of beautiful buds. If you blow on those beautiful buds, same thing happens. Outside dries, inside stays wet. You end up with molds and microbes and smells and tastes and flavors that you didn't want and weren't expecting. If you really want the very, very best flavor, taste, and smell, there are man, and it's crazy. You can actually freeze dry it, like, but it will suck all the moisture out. So your yield just went to nothing. If you were looking for weight, you did not get it because anybody knows what freeze dried candy is? It just crushes to a powder. It's gone. There's nothing. But it will preserve the color, preserve the trichomes, preserve all the terpenes, preserve all of the THC. It's not optimal for us. For us, for storage, you're going to want to put it in a jar, grow bag, something that's airtight, and then you're going to want to check it and when you first put it in there, you want to check it within 4 or 5 hours and make sure that it hasn't just gotten moist. Because if there was moisture inside, it's now going to, as soon as you put it into an airtight environment, all the moisture that's on the inside is going to equilibrate. That's going to happen. It has to reach homeostasis. There you go. It has to. So if you put it in a jar or a bag, check it within a couple of hours and see if it's getting, moist. If you put it in there when it's really crunchy and you need it to get moist, hopefully you have another plant growing somewhere. Throw a couple of leaves in there. Throw a wet stem, a stalk, something like that in there. Don't use tortillas, bananas, oranges. All of that stuff is just asking to introduce some sort of microorganism that wasn't supposed to be there in the first place. You're going to bring in a mold, a bug, something. Especially using produce, you'll bring in fruit flies and fungus gnats are related about this closely. I mean, they're basically the same thing. A fruit fly is a fungus gnat. It's just in a different situation. Like, oh, well, how did I get all these fungus gnats? I'm like, man, how many of those bunches of bananas did you get on sale? And you notice those little flies around your kitchen sink? That's why they're in the grow, because you brought them home from the grocery store. It doesn't have to always come in the soil. We bring home the most of our problems. Pest management is always going to be one of your biggest concerns. Even if you've never had a bug, don't bring home plants. Yeah. Don't bring home plants from other people because you are bringing all their problems home with you. They're problems they don't even know they have because they don't show up in their environment. Different things have their sweet spot, just like your house is going to have its sweet spot, the good spot for you to grow. All these microorganisms have their little sweet spot. Hot and humid is a recipe for disaster. Cold and dry, another recipe for disaster. You're going to have to find that happy medium. Plants, if you're comfortable in that temperature and environment, then there's a good chance your plant is comfortable too. But if you think it's hot in your grow room, they think it's hot in your grow room. If you think it's cold sitting on the floor, then they need to be sitting on a pallet or a bucket or something because it is cold sitting on the floor. And basically, by putting yourself in their environment, like sit around and try to think like a plant for a minute. Is there any airflow in here? Am I catching a breeze? Everybody needs to be just dancing. Nobody needs to be, blowing in the wind. You shouldn't see leaves all off to one side, but everybody does need to be chilling, vibing, dancing. They all need to look like they're listening to reggae music. Yeah, a little slow, calm, collected, smoke another one. The curing process is just going to take a while. You jar it up, check it quickly. If everything's okay, then leave it there, longer and check it. You won't know if you don't open the jar. And if you put some stuff in a jar that feels like it's super crunchy and dry on the outside, then you do not check it for 2 days and you open it and you smell that smell that smells like grandma's closet, you're not gonna like it. It's mold and it grew in there because you didn't open it. And then there's other stuff that can happen in there. There's gases. As it dries, chlorophyll is gassing off and it actually ends up under pressure. And that's why they say burp jars. Put it in a bag and you seal it, you watch that bag blow up like a pillow. And it's under positive pressure. If you don't relieve that pressure and let those gases off, they do some nasty things. Chemical reactions happen. Alcohols and sugar turns into alcohol, and it starts going down a road that you don't want to smoke. It doesn't taste good. It doesn't smell good. It won't burn right. Burns like charcoal. That's not always from nutrients. A lot of that comes from the cure. I mean, if you loaded up a lot of nutrients, yeah, those don't burn. Sprays, the oils, the stuff that you put on them, that'll make charcoal in the end of your joint too. Different additives that you've added to it. Uh, you keep it clean, organic grow, and just water on it. And one handful of worm poop and some water is really all the plant needs. You could add nothing else and do just fine. Yeah. But definitely make sure that you get the dry and the cure technique. Don't spend all the time and money learning how to grow and get all the way to the end and then fail on that dry and cure. The trim, dry, and cure is equally 50% of the importance of the entire process. So you don't really want to use the oxygen absorbers. You want to use a two-way humidity pack, like a Bavita pack, or so we use the oxygen absorbers for stored seed because yeah, definitely with freeze dried, you would want to balance that back. It goes right back up. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And
the freeze dried is cryo, which is way different than just drying or
yeah, the cryo kills off all those microbes that would, when the moisture does come back, there's nothing there alive to do its thing. The old-fashioned way is the best way. Is throw it into jars and burp it, and when it's done burping, when it stops having that, and you'll hear it's like it's a pop. You open the jar and you can't just open it. It's stuck on there, so you have to pull it off physically. And when it stops doing that, and you open the jar and it just pops off, then you're done. Then you can close the jar up and store it for years. I would burp if you're gonna store it for a couple of years. I wouldn't burp it more than once every 6 months. 'Cause every time you open it, you lose terpenes. So them jars that sit on the dispensary shelf that they open and close all day long, terps gone. Every time you smell one, that was it. It's gone. It's not on the flower anymore. It's in your nose and in your brain. There's only so much in there. So yeah, you keep smelling it. It's a scratch and sniff, pretty much. You scratch and there's no sniff. You can only go so far. All right, I think that we are at the end of this. Let me check and see if there's one more slide on here though. I can never see without the glasses. I think it's just the thank you slide that's left. And we'll do the Q&A. I feel like I've missed a slide. There's still another slide. Yep, the mistakes. And I know we talked about, oh, it just went through there too quickly, too quickly. Let me see if I can go back to the mistakes page. No, I don't see it going back to the mistakes page. There we go. Yeah. So, ah, am I just on a lag and I have to wait? Yes. Okay. Thank goodness for lag, right? Oh. Could I have done that twice or did it just go on me? I just went on me. I thought I was getting so good at this. I didn't do it fast enough. Okay. No. There. All right. That should be it. That should be it. It really should. It probably jumps back and forth a couple times, but I know I'm on it. So, common mistakes: overwatering, over nutrients. Just back off, back off. And if you did pour something on your plants, you mixed up a new batch and you poured it on there, and you need to keep track on your every time you're giving it. Because the problem that you see on this plant today is whatever you did 2 weeks ago. Is it takes time before the signs come out on the outside. Even though you screwed up the plant on the inside, you're not going to see the effects of it. Kind of like when your wife gets mad at you. Okay? You're not really, if she's really, really mad at you, you're not going to know the full extent of that for at least 2 weeks. Yeah, it's going to take her that much time to process how mad she's going to be and how, how severe this madness is going to become. But the plant is the same way. If you make her mad, you're not going to know how mad she is for about 2 weeks. So if you keep it on a calendar, when it starts looking weird, first thing you need to do is go look back. What did I do 2 weeks ago? Did I skip a feeding? Did I double a feeding? Did I, every day's a year. Every half day is 6 months of her life. What did you do to her for that 6 months? Did the power go out? Did the air conditioner quit working? Did the DU fill up and stop, pulling moisture out of the air? Did the humidity spike at 80%? If you can keep track and know what time your high and low temperature and low humidity are, you will come a long way. Just going in there and looking at the meter, man, it so happens that when the lights are on, it's always just about great. But in the middle of the night in the dark, it's not the same. And you don't know because you don't look again if the lights came back on and it changed. So if you don't have that high and low setting where you can at least look at it and be like, what do you mean the high humidity is 94%? When was that? I missed that. Oh, that was when the lights went out. And I had just gave them an extra heavy watering. And the fan was on low. Yeah, all of those things. All of those things. The one thing that can mess up the autoflowers is just trying to do too much of the training. They don't manifold well. I mean, you can do some LST with them. You can do some low stress training where you just bend over some branches. But basically, they don't need it unless they're just way above their other friends. You want an even canopy. If you got some that are way short, put them up on a little high chair. Put them up on a crate, a box, something to lift them up to make them more even with the others.
If you've got one or two that are just really tall, then those are the ones that you're going to want to bend over. I don't recommend cutting stuff up. I don't really recommend topping. I mean, guys get great results with like the thinning. You know, they get to 4 through 6 node and they top it, and then they get kind of a candelabra going. I've noticed with all of these strains almost that you'll either get a very nice Christmas tree with a giant donkey tick baseball bat on top, or you'll get a really good candelabra just naturally without messing with it. And if you can get the big baseball bat, why not? They're so great for pictures and social media. Just when you go and harvest it, you can break that little sucker down, put it on a nice tray to dry. Just drying those when it reaches a certain size, it just can't dry quick enough on the inside to keep from getting moldy. And it's so heartbreaking to be like this bud for so long, and then you go to trim it and or then you go to smoke it and you break open a bud and you see that fuzz in there, that grape stuff just breaks your heart. And you're like, well, what is this? And so you're like, oh, it had spider mites. You get the people give you the worst advice when you ask them what's wrong with your plant or what they think of this bud or what they think of this or that. It's an art as much as it's a science. So make it yours for you. The plant that grows in your shadow is going to grow for you. It sat around and sniffed out your biochemistry for 75 years in your lifetime, for 75 days, which is like 75 years of getting to know you, what your moods are, what you eat, what you drink, when you sleep, all that kind of stuff, what your energy level is, what your cholesterol level is. How the plant even knows how fast your heartbeat and blood pressure are. So, I've done that, lick them just to try a few times. I mean, they still grow, but I think that just being there with them, you know, I think you get the same effect. And we always hold them out and go, "You're going to be big and frosty and sticky. I just absolutely know you're going to make it to the bowl. I'm not going to make hash, or you're not RSO unless you're trash." And I'd go in and tell them, "Plant, you are not frosty. You're going to end up in an RSO badge." You know, give them some encouragement. Tell them positive affirmations. Tell them what you want from them. I need you to be fat and sticky and stink to high health. And, impart the purpose that you want in it from the very beginning. I want you to be, the frostiest orange girl that I've ever picked, and you need to have golf ball size hard nuts. That's kind of the way this plant grows, but encourage it to get what you want from it. And if you want it to be tall, tell it you want it to be tall. And if you only have a 4 foot tall little closet, tell her to widen out and stay low, or you'll bend her over and help her. Make sure you tell them what they have to have. The pest management is the biggest deal. Make sure you're not bringing home bugs. Make sure you're not spreading around bugs. Used equipment, fans, dehues, stuff like that. They all come with powdery mildew inside of them. Lights come with bugs inside of them. If you're getting something from a buddy, make sure that you sterilize it and quarantine it. Don't if you bring in a clone or a plant, get that thing off to itself for a couple of months. And don't bring it in your grow till you've actually flowered it, because half the diseases that it has won't show up till it goes into bud. Powdery mildew won't show up till it goes into bud. Nugs! What are you doing, Nug? Oh, he's beating up Kelly. That's all right. That's all right. The stress factors. They say that the more you stress a plant, the stronger it's going to be, the better it's going to be. Oh man, these are reggae plants. They really don't want to stress a whole lot. They're on island time. They just need a drink of water and some sunshine, and that's it. They just want to they want to cruise on in and do their thing. But once you learn where they're going and what time it is, and the fact that you don't have time, you can't wait. You can't wait to transplant. You can't wait to water. You can't wait to move the light. You can't wait to install the fan. You need to have it's an auto flower. It's automatic. Once you turn it on, it doesn't stop, and you get what you put into it. So if you put off giving it food or you put off, if you know that your space where you grow has powdery mildew, if you put out, well, I'm just not going to give them a sulfur spray and veg this time. They only live 75 days. It won't matter. That's the ground that's covered in powdery mildew. And you went all through that way, all through that work, and ended up with nothing that was usable in the end because you skipped a step. If you research IPM is integrated pest management, and pests can be molds, bugs, microbes. They can be things seen and unseen. Broad mites, russet mites. You can't even see them with a jeweler's loupe. You won't know what's wrong. What's wrong with this plant? It looks horrible. Man, the first group of russet mites that I had to actually identify and diagnose without a scope like this that goes to at least 100 times magnification. And that's the reason for this is you've got to have higher magnification. Just the little loop and even the phone taking pictures and blowing them up doesn't get you there. And then if you go to the next step, magnification, like an actual microscope, you'll be like, oh my God, what's on this plant? UV light works great, but it has to be under it for at least 60 seconds to work. So UV light doesn't work on air ducts in your air conditioning system. Unless you can get the air to sit there under the light for 60 seconds before it moves on. Going back and forth over your phone. You have to hold it in one spot, wait 60 seconds, move it to the next spot, wait 60 seconds. It's not an assembly line thing where it's moving through. It has to actually sit for a while. So if you can incorporate them into your lights, great. You'll get skin cancer and you'll get other kinds of cancer. And it's really bad for you as a person to be under UV light for like 60 seconds like that. Or otherwise they'd probably have one going into the Walmart and a 60-second way to walk in. They'd sterilize us all going in and out if they could. But no, the plants like it, but it does mess with their molecules. It does do things to the DNA. Oh yeah, on the microscope, you do need the UV because you can't see them. Man, them little suckers are moving. So the first time I saw stuff live under the microscope, I was like, because you can't see them. They are moving so fast. It's just streaks and dashes, and you get the feeling that something was there, but you have no clue what it was. So you need that UV light, and then they start and they slow down, and then you can see what's in your microscope. But yeah, you definitely need it on a microscope. I thought you meant on a grow light. It's like, I mean, it's not good for you, but it's good for trying to see the bugs. The stress factors, don't stress them. Let them be Bob Marley. They don't need to stress. You don't need to stress. They don't need to stress. Growing should be fun. It should be exciting. It should be a uplifting experience for both you and the plant. If you're stressing and feeling bad when you're going in there, then you're not doing it right. It should be one of those, there's my plant. Let me, open it and feel good and feel empowered. Even if it's just a little bitty plant, because no matter what, it's going to give you, it's going to fulfill its purpose. It's going to give you, even if it's 1 little gram of sticky, icky bud that tastes like nothing you've ever smoked before, it's going to fulfill its purpose. It's not like human beings. Some of us just waste our lives and don't ever do nothing. These plants fulfill their purpose every single time, regardless of their size. And note, less is more, and bigger is not always better. Big plants that have grown a lot of plants that were over a pound, big plants. Big Bertha out at Hemp Nation was that the plant was something ridiculous, like 36 pounds or something stupid on that plant. But huge. He says it was huge. How much I had. But the smoke was not that great. Good things come in smaller packages. The plant's gonna do all this work and it's got all this area to cover. Or it's going to do all this work in this much area, Picasso versus a house painter. You got to think of it that way. So bigger is not always better. Bigger plants are definitely more of a mid-grade. The higher grade stuff is going to be from smaller plants. Like a GMO as a plant has a very small popcorn bud, and they're all over the place on the plant. It does not grow a big cola. It does. Garlilax does golf balls that are interspaced and then they can stack, but it still doesn't do the big baseball bat type colas. It'll do a cola. It's just not the same as the totally stacked one branch on top of another on top of another. You get that from the Dark Jedi's. But I think this is the end. I don't know how to actually end it. Oh, thank you guys. A bunch of people said hi and thank you. All right, we're gonna end the stream so that we're no longer going live. It might play an outro. If it does, I'm just gonna let it ride.
How much is a snowberry?
So all the seeds are 40 a pack or 3 for 100.
Okay.
And there's like 6. No.
Do you breed these?
4.
Too?
No, these are Spencer beans.
Okay.
So Spencer Automatics. He's a young and he's actually a really good breeder. I like a lot of his stuff.
Yeah.
And my customers were wanting me to do a collab with him, to do something with him, help him out. And I started talking to him, and come to find out, he doesn't have a website. He's Facebook dependent only, and then of course he has to work another job to actually support himself. And he's,
Do you take cards
I don't, but I think that
or Cash App or anything?
I have Cash App, Venmo, PayPal.
Oh, all right, perfect.
I can find you one of those.
You
Which
know,
one of
I've
those?
seen the Yoda, Baby Yoda S Stank.
Baby Yoda Stank and
Stank.
Baby Yoda Dosey Dub. I don't think I brought those with me. There might be Baby Yoda Stank up here on the wall. Let me jump up.
Yeah, if I could get one of those and then a grimy.
I don't know why this hasn't ended.